Welcome to the Freight Project podcast, brought to you by Ceresys, a North American third-party logistics company providing shippers transportation management technology and solutions.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Freight Project podcast. On today's podcast episode, Ceresys welcomes Dock411's Daniel Sarowitz and Eric Weidel, an app designed to help drivers save time and money at their pickup and drop-off locations by showing them details about their stops before they make them. Daniel was working for a Midwest HVAC supplier as a warehouse manager and often saw how drivers, once they got to where they were supposed to deliver freight, they didn't know where to go. And Daniel saw a need to give more information to drivers, which in turn allows a shipper to give a great experience to drivers. Eric, who came from a technology development background, teamed up with Daniel to provide more information to drivers through the founding and development of Dock411. On this episode, Dock411 and I will discuss how technology is aiding collaboration and bringing information to carriers, shippers, and logistics service providers, which, in an ever-decreasing capacity world, is vital to find capacity and for shippers to become shipper of choice. Further, we talk about why it's vital shippers do all they can to treat drivers well, because, well, drivers remember and they talk. Further, we're going to continue harping on the theme that is prevalent in nearly all of these Freight Project podcast episodes. Those that have the data win. And for shippers and carriers to survive, they need to work off a shared set of data to increase collaboration, and why communication driven by the use of technology continues to be one of the most important aspects of successful transportation management. We'll conclude our conversation by getting Eric and Daniel's thoughts on what the future holds for technology providers in the logistics space to further aid the transportation industry to increase overall effectiveness. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Freight Project Podcast. And thanks, Dock411, Daniel and Eric, the co-founders, for taking some time out today and joining us on the Freight Project Podcast. We're excited to hear your expertise and how you bring some unique insights to the freight industry and to learn a little more about what you do. And if you can offer some tips for the shippers out there today who are, looking to do better at managing freight and improve their overall supply chain. So thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Well, first and foremost, our audience has to know, what is Dock411 and who are these guys called Daniel and Eric? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. So what we like to say is we're the 411 on shipper facilities. So as some of the young folks out there probably don't know what 411 is, or that you could actually dial that in the past and get information. So shipper facility information for the trucking and logistics and a little bit of the insurance side of things as well. So there's a free app out there for drivers to use to be able to look this information up about their next stop and also review the stops that they were at, were they treated nicely? Was the place clean? Did they get them in and out quickly and easily and safely? So things like that. And that's actually, that will lead right into kind of how we got a good start on things is I was a warehouse manager after college and noticed when drivers would come up to my facility, they would all kind of stop at the same spot where the GPS said, okay, you're here, and get out and start asking questions. Where do I go? What do I do? Is there a bathroom I can use here? Can I park here afterwards? Where can I park? All these types of things. And I just kind of noticed this repetition over and over, and I did a little research and realized, it's not really a driver's fault that they don't know what to do when they get there. They don't have really anywhere to access that information. So realized technology could fill in here, and how could we do this better? And that's kind of where we got our start, and that's kind of how I got to know my partner here, Eric, and I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Sure, yeah. Dan came in, told me about the idea, and I've been doing software development for a long time, longer than I care to admit, but I've been doing work on software and looking at problems And Dan came in and told me about this problem. And frankly, I was incredulous. I couldn't believe that some of the stories that we started to hear as we talked about this.
And welcome to the freight industry, right? Where you see a problem, and you're like, wait a minute. And especially if you come from other industries, you're like, why is this a problem? I don't get it. And so I know that was my biggest hurdle to overcome and understand coming in. So it sounds like you had the same curve.
It was exactly. And I was amazed at what seemed to me like just the brute force persistence of people in this industry to get materials from point A to point B. Because some of the things that I've learned, because I'm not coming from the logistics background, I've learned a lot about drivers. I really appreciate what drivers have much deeper appreciation for what drivers particularly go through on a day-to-day basis. And, so hats off to all of them and everybody else in the industry. But, we found Dan identified this one area where there was just a real lack. And there's so much going on in the industry. There's a lot of areas where, technology can come into play and things can make everyone's life better. We identified this one. Dan identified it. And we, decided to work together on it. We've got a team here now. It's not just Dan and I, but we're all working on it to try to get this information collected and out to the industry. So,
yeah, and that's what I see. I've been in the industry myself. I came from a purely marketing background, working at agencies, working with businesses as an representative of them to help them be successful, whether through advertising or marketing solutions. And I think 6 years ago, there was a statistic that said only about 35% of people used a transportation management system, and that blew my mind. I was like, what? Yeah, right. That doesn't make any sense, But over the last 6 years, I've seen either it's me just being inundated with it because I work in the industry now, or it's true, and I think it is true, with different acquisitions and other people coming to the market with new technology solutions around the supply chain. The idea of the digital supply chain and advanced manufacturing and Industry 4.0 and the Internet of Things and big data and the forthcoming blockchain that will revolutionize all of our lives, where all we have to do is watch TV.
Right.
It's great that technology is being used to solve some of these freight problems that we're seeing, and makes it more efficient, and it helps all players really do better at their job, because there are a lot of players going on in the freight world. There's shippers, there's freight brokers or 3PLs like a Ceresys, there's technology providers like Dock 411, there's carriers, there's drivers, there's the customer. So with your platform, you kind of have this unique ability to touch all of those people, which is cool. And you're really an information provider, and there's been some terms that have been thrown around. I wouldn't say that you're a 4PL, because a 4PL arranges all of those people. You're really just providing all of those entities information. And some people have gotten the crazy idea to add another number and call that a 5PL or a 6PL. So people can go Google that for themselves if they'd like. But I wonder, with such unique insight, and hearing from all those players, what would you say you're hearing from them and those different constituents as the most pressing issue in shipping that they're facing today?
Well, as everybody kind of knows, it's a tight market, so it forces people to think differently. Coming from a warehousing side of things, we were very inward focused. There was always too much to do, too little people to do it, and you're running around trying to get either freight checked in or freight out the door, things like that. Well, shippers have to do that now, but shippers have to look outside their doors and see what drivers are getting into when they pull into the lot. What are the obstacles? What are all those things? Because now they're talking about on tools like Dock 411. They're going to have to start thinking a little differently to be able to stand out from the crowd and make sure that carriers actually want to go to them to pick up the freight. Now they can kind of pick and choose a little bit if they want, if they want to, trim the fat, if you will. And tools like Dock 411 kind of expose that. So we've been kind of seeing that, and that's something I can directly relate to. Is that they got to start looking outside their doors and almost caring about things that they didn't have to care about before.
Yeah, or they just weren't even aware of. Probably the most common two or three things that we hear about are what's the parking situation? Because I've got limited hours time left, so I might need to park. Can I park, or what's the closest? Is there a bathroom? And some kind of what do I want to say? Lounge, vending machine, just food. Those are probably the three most common of the 70 different plus things that we can track about a facility. Those are the top three. And like Dan said, a lot of this, I don't think shippers were even aware of that these were issues that drivers were, concerned about or had questions about. Not to fault them or anything. They were just, as Dan said, just busy doing their work. And but market dynamics, what's going on in the industry right now, it's causing them to kind of stop and ask these questions. And I think overall it's great for the industry. It should make everything work more smoothly, which means more money for everybody in the whole system. So
it's cool to see. It's cool to see that the shipper is starting to care what a driver goes through, and it's almost like cross training on what everybody's doing. Where a shipper wouldn't have really cared about what a carrier has to go through at these stops. Now we can almost be that educator. We hear people ask us all the time, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that was a thing or that mattered." We were talking to people the other day. They had no idea. They were kind of on the shipper side of things. They had no idea that even drivers brought a pet in the cab, and that was kind of a like, oh wow, that's a thing. We're like, well, yeah, guys spend almost their entire life. Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying technology is bringing people together to see the humans side of them, right? So there's a backlash with that sometimes, right? But it sounds like anecdotally, at least, that hey, you get to know the driver better, and at the end of the day, it's about communication. And it's about collaboration. And I think you hit on a huge thing called cross-training. We're all in this together. Shippers, carriers, drivers. We're all partners. We should act like it. And I think data is the great equalizer. And data allows you to take emotions out of the situation because things happen, right? In freight claims on our side of the house, we say scientia potestas est. And in Latin, that means knowledge is power. And Doc 411, just like you said, harkens back to the information line 411. You get everything you need to know. Then you can, go from a place of understanding on the same shared set of data with the players involved and really, truly start to move the needle by building stronger relationships. And carriers care about that more than ever, and drivers. And there's this term out there called shipper of choice. And I think what you're allowing shippers to be is to truly achieve that. It's no longer just a phrase. It's a tangible thing empowered with Doc 411 to get to know that driver and say, what do you need for my freight to be more attractive so you can be profitable? You're a business too. Exactly. So how do they do that? How do they get more prepared, with their freight from your app? And why is that important to become shipper of choice?
Yeah, a couple of great points in there, Adam. One is, I didn't hear the Latin version, but I think somebody else, I heard it attributed to Jeff Bezos, or it might have been Warren Buffett or somebody, but
some smart rich dude. Right?
Right. So we should all try to emulate them, please. He who has the most data wins. He or she. It really is. The data drives all of this, and we say we're not trying to give data to beat anybody up. We're trying to collect data so that everybody can do better and make more money, and and then run a better operation, a safer operation, and so forth. So, so to answer the second part of your question, I'll let Dan give some specifics. But one of the things that we hear about shipper of choice, because I don't think you can go anywhere. I think I was stopped in a gas station somewhere, and there was something about shipper of choice. Oh, wow. But so it seems to be everywhere. But what we feel really good about Doc 411, because as we talk to people, a lot of people are like, I understand it, but I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do about it? All right. And we've seen some theoretical stuff and talked with some academic people about what they can do in 3 to 5 years. Shippers want to know what they can do now because they're not getting loads picked up today. And we really think Doc 411 is well, we know it's something that you can do today to address that.
Mm-hmm. And exactly, that's great points, Eric. And we've tried to be, you can go to our website and jump on and immediately start communicating your information. Like you said in the beginning, the communication is a huge thing. And so if you're communicating out what the rules that you have set out for a driver to do at your facility, might as well communicate that to them in an efficient way. It's your rules, it's your procedures, it's all those things that the shipper is making. So communicate that out to the driver, and through a tool like this, and things get easier. Drivers know what to do. They don't make bad decisions. We can't turn the wheel for them, but we can show them exactly what they're getting into beforehand, and that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like lumper fee, just one example. Yeah, a lumper fee. We don't hear drivers saying, I'm mad that they had a lumper fee. What we hear them saying is, I lost money because I didn't know they had a lumper fee. And now I had to go back and, find an ATM and get the money or whatever. It's not the fact that you got a lumper fee, Mr. Shipper. It's the fact that nobody told me that you had a lumper fee. So, the benefit for the shipper is put this information out there, and you can immediately say you're trying to be a better citizen in the economy, and doing something that recognizes this problem and do something about it.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm going to steal the phrase, since we're talking about phrases of successful people. Bill Clinton beat George H.W. Bush in 1992 because James Carville realized it's the economy, stupid. And for us in the freight world, it's increasingly becoming it's the data, stupid. And so, we need to pay attention to the data. It allows for that communication and collaboration. And you really hit on one of the biggest pressing points we're all facing, and it's the capacity crunch. And so, what's a tip beyond just getting more information, but a tip that you'd offer the audience on how to survive and thrive in the capacity crunch, other than what you've already provided?
So a few different things. Obviously, like you said, communication is key. We've heard so it's amazing. So I've spent a lot of time talking with drivers, and if they get burned, they remember it. And by the way, they love to talk. So I don't know if you ever talked to a driver before, but it's probably minimum an hour-long conversation, which is great. We learn so much from talking to them. But just treat the people that are in that chain. Treat them like how you want to be treated. I mean, it goes back to simple kindergarten stuff, but I mean, we hear that all the time from drivers. It's just, I got burned in this place, I will never go back. And we hear that all the time. Especially in the app and social media and through our driver panels and things like that. It's if they get burned, they certainly remember it. And we actually had one of the drivers. She's her name's Candy. She's an awesome lady, 74 and still driving a truck. And she sent us She sent us over 800 cards, note cards of the stops that she was making. So basically, a Doc 411
on index cards.
Cards, yeah. And
hey, the internet was built on like punch cards or
right.
something. I don't know. Al Gore cleaned it up in the 90s, but yeah.
Right.
Eric's old enough. So it's pretty cool that drivers have been doing this and they remember things like that. So if you have a good reputation, and if you start treating people well, or if you continue to do that, that I think goes a long way. Driver community talks. And one other thing I've heard as well from multiple audiences, since we're talking about those, pay your bills on time. That's what people
novel. I love it.
Wow, crazy.
Exactly. It's people don't like doing work that they're worried about getting paid for.
That's right.
And that goes kind of across the board, I think. If there's a situation, like we say, communicate about it. When communication stops and money is involved, that's when people get upset. And so that's kind of just the random things we've been seeing of like, just do the right thing. Do the things you were taught in kindergarten or first grade of how to treat people.
That's fantastic. Well, I love that, and I love that technology is allowing us to, if we let it, enable us to be more human and be more civil and bring back what it means to be a good person. I love that. And that is evident in your DNA as a company. So breath of fresh air. So you guys are, building this platform, great innovation in the freight space. Love to see that. And I think, there's so much innovation to be had in a more than $1 trillion US only even almost $1 trillion industry. And so when it comes to technology in the next maybe 2 to 5 years, what do you see as the most impactful technologies that, the freight industry is going to see?
Well, I'm sure you see the news, autonomous trucks, blockchain, all electric trucks are getting a lot of attention. We know dock stuff. that's our niche. We try to really hone in on that, and shippers are going to become more visible with tools like Dock 411. I believe the FMCSA I think was working on something as well, and it's going to be tough because it's hard to regulate somebody's basically private property, on their business, but there will be more rules and things coming down. Excuse me. On the shipper side, which they've not really been used to. So that's something that we see that's coming in the future that's like 100% realistic. I'm not smart enough to know if, when autonomous trucks will be a real thing. But when I think realistic stuff, and I think definitely shippers will have to be kind of looking outside of their dock doors, basically, and getting their act together. And Eric may have some notes on that as well.
Yeah, all those things. Autonomous trucks, obviously, there's a lot of work being done there. I think I just read something that there was a truck that drove across. It might have been the Golden Gate Bridge. I might be completely wrong on their bridge. But that's going to move ahead. My thought on that is that you'll see that much more in like DC to DC type move, where they, go from DC onto the interstate within a mile and drive, many miles on the interstate and pull off and don't go more than a mile, that kind of stuff. There's just, just from what we know from our business, that how complex it is for humans to navigate some of these. Chicago, for example, in New York, any metropolitan area, it would be very difficult, I think, for technology to really come into play in any kind of like the relatively near term. But moving DC to DC, that's a little bit different. We've talked with some academic type people, and we're trying to help educate them that it isn't just a technology problem. It is a human problem. It's understanding some of the particulars and how that affects what time you deliver. It's just really hard to program. I mean, I'm coming from a programming background, and people think that a lot of times that it's just so easy to make things do this. It is incredibly hard to do even simple stuff on a computer a lot of times. And so it's coming for sure, but I'd be more thinking that autonomous trucks will have an impact than blockchain, certainly for like the day-to-day for drivers. For back office type, blockchain might be something that they're more touched by, but and shippers and so forth. But Internet of Things, that's going to definitely have a role in tracking with RFIDs and stuff like that. I mean, there's no question that technology is going to have an impact, but people are still going to be very key to the whole industry.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you have to build yourself an infrastructure as a shipper or any company really in modern times that allows you to scale for those possible new technologies. And there are systems today that you can put in place that you don't have to wait to be innovated. But the reality is that most of those new technologies will connect to either legacy or current systems through integration or APIs or whatever webhook you might have in there, XML sharing. And so, it's important to start leaning on the systems that are in use today and understand what might be coming, and that the whole thing will be visibility and transparency. I think that's what technology is going to do for our industry. And you guys are at the heart of that with Dock 411. And I can't thank you enough. You bring such a unique perspective of the Switzerland of the freight world, where you're neutral really to everyone, which is great. And we need more of that. And you're bringing more information and data to the marketplace. So Daniel and Eric, thanks for the time today. And excited to get to know a lot more about your company. And for our listeners, make sure you check out dock411.com to see what they're all about. Tell them I sent you. So if you do sign up and they make a lot of money, they know what's up. And thanks for tuning in for this week's Freight Project podcast, Ask the Expert series. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed.